If you look through modern science textbooks or lists of historical feminist icons, you will almost certainly find the name Merit Ptah. For decades, she has been celebrated as the very first female doctor in recorded history. The standard historical account states that she lived roughly 5,000 years ago. It claims her son buried her in the prestigious Valley of the Kings. There is a slight problem with this story. Merit Ptah, the pioneering physician, never actually existed. The entire historical legend traces back to a single, localized transcription error made by a medical historian in 1938. This academic mistake took on a life of its own, proliferating across encyclopedias and internet forums. The fictional Merit Ptah entirely erased the true identity of the woman who actually held the title. The real earliest known female medical professional does not originate from a 1930s misprint. Her actual historical evidence has been resting silently beneath the desert sands of the Old Kingdom for over 4 millennia. To find her, we have to look to an archaeological dig in 1903. A French team excavated the Giza and Saqqara necropolis, a vast ancient burial ground outside Cairo. Archaeologist Georges Aron Benedate uncovered a massive stone mastaba. A mastaba is a flat-roofed, rectangular tomb structure used by ancient Egyptian elites. This particular tomb belonged to a highly ranked royal official named Akhetepep. Inside his chapel, the team found a towering limestone artifact known as a false door, a magical gateway to the afterlife. Carved into it is the identity of Akhetepep's mother, Pesachet, who lived around 2400 BCE, surrounded by rare professional titles. Pesachet operated as the head of an entire medical institution. A woman wielding absolute administrative authority 4,500 years ago requires us to look closely at the society that empowered her. The first and most prominent title etched on her false door translates to Lady Overseer of Female Physicians. As this hierarchy chart shows, Egyptian medicine was highly empirical and strictly organized. The profession was fractured into extreme specializations, with dedicated proctologists, dentists, and ophthalmologists, all answering to layers of inspectors and overseers. Pesachet sat at the apex of the female division. Her physicians handled specific clinical responsibilities, deeply rooted in gynecology and obstetrics, and managed the training of midwives at specialized medical schools like the one in the city of Sais. This title establishes her as the chief administrative officer of a state-sponsored medical department. She directed personnel, managed training curriculums, and bridged the gap between daily clinical care and the rigid royal bureaucracy. Her authority extended far beyond clinical administration. The second title carved into her tomb names her the overseer of funerary priests of the king's mother. To understand this role, we must look at the ancient Egyptian concept of Heka, which translates roughly to magic. In the Old Kingdom, healing was a strict duality. Empirical surgery and spiritual exorcism were viewed as equally valid, required tools for treating any ailment. Medical professionals regularly invoked specific deities. Sekhmet, the lioness goddess, was fiercely worshipped as the divine force responsible for unleashing plagues, and therefore the only entity capable of curing them. As the overseer of funerary priests, Pesachet was an expert in applying this power. She managed the complex spiritual rituals and magical amulets necessary to guarantee the safe transition of royal family members into the afterlife. For a practitioner like Pesachet, science and religion were inseparable. Mastering both the physical anatomy and the spiritual liturgy was the only accepted method to preserve life in the Old Kingdom. Her third title, Urk-Nesu, or King's Acquaintance, reveals her standing within the state hierarchy. This designation granted her direct, elite access to the pharaoh's inner circle. This access was backed by robust legal autonomy. Women in the Old Kingdom possessed the right to own and inherit property, execute binding legal contracts, and manage massive agricultural estates independently of men. Her false door was not hidden away. It was installed prominently inside the monumental tomb of Akhethetep, who historians believe was her son. Constructing a monument of this scale required immense capital, serving as a public declaration of her family's wealth. Pesachet's titles carry actual weight. They represent legally protected economic and political power, placing her among the highest echelons of the Egyptian state. The professional freedom Pesachet exercised stands in sharp contrast to the rules of later civilizations. Centuries later in ancient Greece, formal laws were passed explicitly barring women from studying or practicing medicine. In those subsequent eras, women who possessed the drive to study obstetrics or treat the sick were forced to crop their hair and disguise themselves in men's clothing just to access formal medical training. The historical record shows us that the exclusion of women from scientific fields is not a constant, inevitable feature of human history. It is a cultural variable, shifting drastically depending on the values of the society in power. The Old Kingdom of Egypt operated on a starkly different logic. They maintained the pragmatic belief that preserving life and administering a complex medical system simply required the most capable minds, regardless of gender. Pesachet sought need a modern transcription error or a crater on Venus to validate her legacy. We have the hard evidence of a woman who mastered empirical science, sacred rituals, and royal politics 4.5 millennia ago, and her truth, carved permanently in stone, outlives any fiction.